Evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition on the L&D Companion. I am super excited to tell you that this is our most registered webinar to date, and that's everything to say about our guest tonight, and I can't wait to introduce her. Before we do, just a few little things I'd like to do is you may see in the poll that there is, and some of you already voting through, which is great. We'd just like to know at what point in your career you're currently at, which gives us a really good piece of data and statistics for us to use as part of our ongoing work on the L&D Companion. And also, if people like what they're going to hear tonight, please do put it on social media. We want to sort of shout loud and proud about all the work that we're doing to empower the profession. So a very quick introduction to me. For those that don't know you, my name is Fodi Kyriakos. I am a honorary radiographer, as I tell Barak. Spent 23 years working with radiographers. That's when my love affair with the profession started, and I've not gone away since. We've set up the Skilled Personnel Network for very much to bring a community of radiographers together, and globally as well, to strengthen the voice, both diagnostic and therapy, and in whichever direction you take in your career, whether you're still a radiographer, whether you previously a radiographer but still have a passion for it, and I know most of you are. So it was a very brief background on me. I'm going to pass you over to my co-host Barak, and then we're going to introduce our guest tonight.
Hiya, I'm Baruch Vidian. Most people probably know me as Boz. I'm a reporting radiographer up in Manchester, and I've been roped into many of Foddy's harebrained ideas, but this one is possibly the best he's had in a long time, and it's great to see such a large amount of people joining and getting involved.
Yeah, thank you very much. I keep going to call you Boz as well, so you have to forgive me.
It's fine. I've been called worse.
Me too, should I add. I am delighted to introduce our guest tonight, Fiona Noden. And Fiona, before I bring you in, I would like to say that it was a few months ago that I was introduced to the knowledge that we had a chief exec of an NHS trust that was formerly a radiographer. And the moment I knew that, as Baruch knows, I'm like, I have to get Fiona. I have to get Fiona onto the L&D Companion to speak to radiographers, because it's fair to say at the moment we have a very challenging environment that we're working in, and I think the opportunity for us to bring you in as a guest to speak to everyone tonight is an absolute joy, and I think it will be very useful. It'll be very interesting to see the type of questions that we're getting to come through. I think we're going to find that we're going to know it's a very challenging environment out there, but as we called this, we want people to know, they're not just a radiographer, as the term goes, and that there is the art of the possible with people's careers. So Fiona, without further ado, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Buddy, and I hope I don't disappoint people today. So I am not just a radiographer, I am a chief executive of an NHS organisation, and I work in the lovely vicinity of Bolton. So tonight I'm just going to hopefully start a conversation that we can have later about people, radiography, leadership, resilience and opportunity. So just to give you a bit of an oversight about me, radiography gave me far more than a profession. It taught me about people, it taught me about trust, it taught me about relationships, resilience and leadership. And looking back, many of the skills that helped me become a chief executive are the same skills I first developed as a radiographer. So I'm going to touch on a few things today. So radiography is a foundation for leadership, building relationships and trust. Please don't wait until you feel ready. Leading with kindness and accountability, and learning from setbacks and embracing opportunity. So people often ask me why I chose radiography, and I think it chose me. If I'm honest, it's because I am very clumsy, and I started my life quite a lot visiting the Bolton A&E department as a patient. So as I say, incredibly clumsy, and truth be told, I'm still incredibly clumsy now. My mum did take me to the clumsy doctor when I was 10. I have seen the notes of that, so that might affect how I am really. But the difference nowadays is I go down like a sack of spuds, and it tends to be more embarrassing than serious, and long may that last. But growing up, I did have a remarkable talent for falling off things. I fall down the stairs regularly, I trip over things, and generally I kept the X-ray department busier than it needed to be. I became very familiar with hospitals, not just the technology, but mainly the people, the noises, and especially the smells. But what did stay with me throughout all that was how calm, reassuring, and professional staff always were. No matter how worried, upset, or sore I was, staff had a way of making me feel safe. And people didn't just look after me, they looked after those who were with me. My parents, I have a very anxious mum, she still is very anxious, and also my extended family. So when it came to choose a career, radiographer really appealed to me because it combined physics, which is a love, science, technology, and patient care. What I didn't realise at the time, but it would also teach me about communication, innovation, relationships, trust, and leadership. So I do probably owe my career to my childhood clumsiness. Had I been better staying upright and not broken all those bones, I might never have discovered radiography. But I genuinely never set out to become a chief executive. I genuinely never set out to become a leader, but I have been called bossy, and I think there's somebody on the call today who called me intimidating when I was 19, Elaine Quick, just saying. But the best I had ever been called in my life is Scary Pixie. I am only 5'2", but I did grow up in a multi-generational household. We ate together, we argued together. My parents, although they were working class, were aspirant conservatives in the Thatcher years. So it made for very interesting and challenging conversations, and that shaped absolutely who I am today. I trained at Salford. I had a great education in the Salford Health Authority, so I had experience in multiple care settings with a diverse set of radiographers and radiologists. The experiences included children's services, mental health, specialist neuro, and specialist GI. I was also elected a student union rep because I seemed to be able to communicate and present people's cases. Not that I'm argumentative at all. It did take me 4 years to qualify. I am not particularly proud of it, but it did take me 4 years to qualify because I kept failing my exams. I'm not so great at book learning, but give me experiential learning anytime, and I'm fabulous at it. Looking back, those 4 years did give me so many fantastic opportunities. And in my 4th year, I was often used as a free pair of hands. I had great work experiences, and by the time I qualified, I was basically running a CT scanner. Elaine, I think you can remember that. And I do remember vividly getting a proper telling off when I was a newly qualified for clearing a CT waiting list over Christmas. I just couldn't understand if you had capacity to do more patients, then why wouldn't you, especially at that time of year? So I qualified, went straight into Salford. I saw some really good leaders and I learned from poor leaders. Throughout my career, I've worked for some absolutely outstanding leaders and a few who weren't quite as effective. In fact, they were downright poor. But experiences were very valuable. The best leaders inspired me, and the less effective ones taught me lessons about how not to treat people. In fact, the poor leaders were threatened by talent, and that teaches you resilience, tenacity, and perhaps some bloody-mindedness. All useful in the job I have now. So back in the day, Salford got a new dynamic chief executive who wanted to support development and change, wanted to be the safest hospital in the country, had real aspiration for continuous improvement. I learned a lot from him. So as a band 6 radiographer, it was a bit scary, but he actually knew my name within a couple of weeks of him starting, most likely because I was the elected Society of Radiographers trade union rep and had been in some very tricky conversations with his colleagues. So I held office as a local rep. I was the regional chair, and I was also elected nationally, so sat at the Society and the Council of Radiographers. It was the best leadership programme I have ever had the privilege of experiencing and had the biggest impact on me. And it wasn't really a leadership programme at all, but it taught me so many, many things. It taught me how to listen properly. You learn to gain people's trust, and you hold their secrets. You learn how to understand different perspectives. You learn how to influence without authority. You learn how to negotiate, challenge constructively, and have very difficult conversations. You also learn that you cannot defend the indefensible. Many of the skills I use today as a chief executive were developed during that period. And most importantly, it taught me that leadership isn't about hierarchy. It's about relationships. It's about credibility, integrity and trust. So going back to before David started, I'm making all this sound really lovely, aren't I? But I had 13 interviews. My first did not fit. And perhaps I'm not always the easiest of people to manage. But anyway, when David started, I found that I was now supported. And the words, get her a job in management before she kills me, did make me laugh at times. I did have a few secondments out of radiology and eventually moved through the radiology hierarchy. A job as a divisional manager came up and then I was seconded into it. But people do like to try before they buy. And I often describe it, if you were to speed date me, you wouldn't come for a second date. But give me time and you will fall in love with me and then I'll get the substantive job. I did love being a divisional manager, but I never thought my job was safe. I thought I was going to get sacked every day and someone better would come in. But then we didn't have a coup. So after a late Friday afternoon application after a couple of years, I successfully went to Wigan. But I didn't do the due diligence it deserved. And I thought everywhere was like Salford, a real can-do attitude. But I was in for a big surprise. It was the worst and the best 2 years of my life, really, of my career. I worked for a very difficult person, but they taught me so much about me and how resilient I am, and that I am a good leader and I lead by example with kindness and compassion. Then after that person left, I had the best 3 years in Wigan. I love Wigan. I still love Wigan today. We achieved the Best Staff Awards, the best place to work. I absolutely loved it. And then after about 3 years, I got tapped on the shoulder for a job at the Christie's, the Deputy Chief Executive and co. And so I thought, different job, let's try something new. So as I was leaving Wigan, the Chief Executive at the time, Andrew Foster, said, I want you to be a Chief Executive in 5 years. I laughed. What do you see that I don't see? I really couldn't see it, but here I am. Anyway, but the Christie, I loved it, but I was a round peg in a square hole. I missed the acute services, I missed the community spirit, but it gave me loads of development opportunity. I did the Aspiring Chief Executive programme. However, the first time I applied for it, they said, why do you want to be a Chief Executive? And I said, I'm hoping that this programme will help me decide. They tell me it was a wrong programme. I needed to know that what I wanted to do. So the next time I applied, I went to my very first radiography badge and said, this is me, but I want to be better. I want to support staff and I want to improve patient care. So I got on the programme. It was a brilliant programme and really helped me consolidate some of my skills and learn about my imposter syndrome. So then in 8 interviews later, I got the Bolton Chief Executive job. I started on the 16th of March 2020. What a time to start as a Chief Executive. It was the week of lockdown. But, and I've said, I've always had imposter syndrome, but this time, starting in the pandemic, we were all in the same point. We were all in the same position. No one knew how to do things, but our staff did. And that's one thing I could rely on, our staff. One of the greatest gifts radiography ever gave me was the ability to build trust quickly. Every day as a radiographer, we meet people who are anxious, frightened, in pain, or facing uncertainty. Within minutes, we're asking them to trust us, sometimes asking them to do things that feel uncomfortable, extremely embarrassing, impossible, or hurt. We learn how to communicate clearly. We learn how to explain complex things in a way people understand. We learn how to make people feel safe. We learn how to stay calm when others around us are anxious. Those aren't just clinical skills, they're leadership skills. And in many ways, I use exactly the same skills today as I used as a radiographer. Whether you're caring for a patient, leading a team, or leading an organisation, success is built on relationships and trust. It's all about the people. Radiographers build trust every day with strangers. That is an extraordinary leadership skill. So my career hasn't been planned. It's been opportunistic and serendipitous. And I have often envied colleagues who had a tick list plan, but that's just not me. My career evolved through curiosity, through secondments, opportunities, setbacks, brilliant mentors, and people believing in me before I fully believed in myself. Seeing some very bad things, being treated very poorly, and seeing colleagues not being looked after, and thinking I could and would and should do better. The common thread wasn't ambition for a particular job title. It It was wanting to improve things for patients and staff. Leadership was not the destination. It was simply the way I could make a bigger difference and have a bigger impact every single day. So that's me. So please, when you ask any questions, be kind. Remember, I'm still human. And when you cut me, I still bleed. And hopefully one of you might, if you're x-raying me, when I do fall over again, just be kind. Thanks very much, Cody and Balak.
It's a pleasure, Fiona. Thank you very, very much. And I can see we have the numbers still coming into the room. Lots of thumbs ups and stuff. It's amazing to hear that story. Given that Baruch and I are the chairs, we had some initial questions, but I'm sure the Q&A will be coming in very thick and fast very soon. So everyone in the audience, feel free to put in, and we'll do our very, very best to get through them questions to Fiona. So first one, I mean, I guess if you don't mind, Baruch, I just want to jump in with the first one, because it was something that I was really keen to understand, Fiona, which was, how have you seen radiography change both as a practice and a profession from the time that you were working as a radiographer and now with your lens as a chief exec?
So I must admit I'm very old, and so the very first CT scan I worked on was a reel-to-reel, and people will not remember that, but it took 20 seconds to acquire one slice, and I can still remember exactly what we used to have to say: breathe in and out, small breath in and hold it, and it's 20 seconds for one slice, and now it's like 10 seconds for a whole body. Technology's changed so much, and I think the data explosion that we have as radiographers is just absolutely phenomenal. So technology's changed. The profession has changed quite considerably, and I think people find technology quite sexy, but the reason we do the jobs we do is to put people at ease, to get people in the best position. And I think it's harder to do a brilliant chest x-ray than it is to do a CT scan. And I go into our department now and I question why the images are the way they are. And who are you? Who do you think you are? It's like, I'm still a radiographer when you scratch me. But yeah, I think the profession has changed a lot. There's even more that the profession will change into, and it's how we embrace that. Those just not just the technology changes, but I think as generations change as well, people, I think, have forgotten how to speak to each other with compassion and kindness sometimes. And just put yourself in their shoes, because there will be a patient that you will never, ever forget, and they will have a profound impact on your life. And it will be the reason why you get out of bed sometimes and do the jobs you do, because people will remember how they're treated. They're not going to remember the sexy bit of kit in the corner that acquired their image. They'll remember the people that took those images. So please never ever forget that.
No, absolutely. Baruch?
I think first of all, I think on behalf of everyone, I think I want to say thank you for that introduction of your journey. I think that it takes quite to be that honest about how you've come to be where you are can be quite hard sometimes. I'm going to go quite broad, but we've got an opportunity to speak to a radiographer who is a chief exec. You mentioned some of the softer skills that have helped you now. Do you think there are any specific radiographer skills that stick out above others that have helped you reach where you are?
My immediate response is yes. And people tell me stuff. Every day, people tell me stuff. Our secretaries tell me stuff. And it's not because I'm the chief executive. They tell me because I'm humble and I listen. And I think the specific skill as a radiographer that you have is getting a patient in a room potentially on their own and taking all the clothes off and getting to do things that they will never do in front of another human being. And it's that immediacy around trust. And as a radiographer, if you harness that that is such a special skill to have. You will never abuse it. It is there, and it's part of your portfolio of skills of communication. But every day people tell me stuff and you hold it, because it's like being with a patient when you first qualified and you're trying to get them to stand on one leg and hop around, even though they've only got the one leg and they can't hop around. But yeah, it's that immediacy of trust, I think, is very special.
Absolutely. With the questions are coming in thick and fast. I literally have one more, just leading on to sort of kind of Baruch's point there around your current lens. Observing the profession as you do now, Fiona, what advice would you give radiographers when we think about what's happening, and you refer to it on the technology and everything, what you've observed as chief exec that potentially other professions do incredibly well that we could learn from? What could we do as a profession that could make us more perhaps influential and understand, that whole term about we're not just a radiographer. So that would be sort of my request for you to sort of maybe sort of get your views on that.
So I think every single patient who comes through wherever you work will have one of two things. They'll either have an X-ray or some form of diagnostic image, or they will have a blood test or some form of pathology test. Radiographers touch so many different patients every single day, but I think sometimes we work in quite a closed environment. It's quite dark. Actually, look outside your own department, because the impact you have throughout the whole organisation you work for and on the people who use your services is absolutely profound. You will leave a lasting impact. So use that very carefully. Use that influence, because you experience so many different things in that 24-hour period that you're in work. Actually, tell people what it's like. Make sure that people understand what it's like to be a radiographer. So I always say you can't kid a kidder, because I've been there in the middle of the night. Barrett's just said before to me, he's been in theatre all day. I've seen some of our surgeons when they were very young, behave quite badly. And it's like, I know what you like, people. So behave well. Don't kid a kidder. So radiographers get everywhere. Use that skill, use that influence. You have so much to give. Don't limit yourself by saying, I'm just a radiographer. No, you're not just anything. You are a radiographer that is central to the workings of an organisation, that nothing will happen if you're not involved. Make sure you're involved. Get involved, and please don't let your self-limits limit what you do, because don't let anybody tell you don't want to hear from you. Yeah, we want to hear from you. Don't let people get in the way of you being heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Baruch, I'm going to go into the Q&As here, because I think they're coming through quite a lot here, Fiona.
I think the first question is from someone you may or may not know, Fiona. Someone called Elaine Quick.
Elaine Quick knew me when I was a student and I was an out.
She's got quite a simple question. It's just, what piece of advice do you wish someone had given you as a newly qualified radiographer?
Oh, gosh. The world's your oyster, and don't let it not be. And I think, so you do think when you're newly qualified, what am I going to be doing this till I'm 65? Actually, radiography gives you so much. It gives you so many skills, and you can get everywhere in a hospital. When I was clinical, there wasn't a place I didn't know in Salford. I knew all the shortcuts to everywhere, I knew everybody. Because everybody knows radiographers, they know what you like and they know how to behave with you. But yeah, the world is your oyster, embrace it. And if somebody says, do you want to do this? Say yes and run with it, and then think about it afterwards. That's what I'd say.
Isn't it interesting hearing you say that, Fiona? Because as we were talking beforehand, wasn't we, that I mentioned to you that someone I spoke to said that, we forget our superpowers as from a radiography profession. Operationally, very, very, very well rounded operationally, but also from a clinical governance perspective, we're very governance sensitive
Oh,
now.
absolutely.
And you wonder, don't you, if sometimes the the regulations around the practice of radiography makes people even more sensitive to step out of certain boundaries. But I think it's about separating, just to your point there, the professional sort of clinical element of taking risks and the bravery of stepping out when you want to do something else in your career.
And in the job I've got now, governance keeps us safe. It's there to ensure that it keeps our staff safe, it keeps our patients safe. And when the regulators come in, I hadn't even thought about it before tonight, Bodhi, to be honest, about the governance around radiology. But actually, that's probably helped me shape the career that I've got now around really embracing it. Our chief nurse is called Tyrone, and he calls governance sexy. And I think we absolutely embrace that.
I love that. Oh my word. Well, do you know what? These questions are great that are coming in, Fiona. We got one here from Rachel Picton. What skills do you see radiographers needing in the future as technology advances so quickly? I know we touch upon some of this, you've touched upon some of this, but actually I think it's a really important question to just try and understand what we're going to try and do to future-proof the profession.
So the person skills aren't going to go away. In fact, I think the person skills are more important now than they've ever been. I think the technology in radiology has blown my brain, never mind everybody else's. But I think the people skills will always be there, and you have to have those people skills to be a really good radiographer at any level. I think the technology, we have to embrace it. But we also need our colleagues in our radiologists to embrace it too. It's not there for fear, it's there to support. So I think many of us use AI, or many of you use Copilot or something along those lines. We have to embrace the digital technologies that are available to us. We have to make our lives easier, and we have to ensure that we continue to grow the profession and bring people into it, but also keep expanding it as well. There's more work than there are people. The work's never going to go away. It's how we do that work and make it more efficient and make it better for everybody as well. But I think there are risks around technology. But I think if we didn't take those risks, we wouldn't be continuing to develop as a profession either.
Yeah.
No,
we've had Marianne sort of come on before, haven't we, Barak, about saying about this particular point, which is that at some point we do need to step out within the boundaries of safety and governance, but we do need to step out if we want to create more influence as a profession. Sorry, Barak.
No. I was going to agree with that, and also, Fiona, what you're saying, as we coming from a chest reporting, AI's now come in and things like that. But what you mentioned before of being able, one of the superpowers of radiographers is being able to put that patient at ease and get the images to be able to report, and that's never going anywhere as far as I can see, at least not in my lifetime. We'll still be needing that.
We're not robots, and people aren't robots.
And that's, I think,
everybody at all ages. Your radiographers deal with all ages.
That's I think is the standout. It's one of the skills that when you see a good radiographer or a good nurse or a good anyone, it's their skill, their communication skills, which is what you're referring to. Pivoting from that, Nick Barlow has asked, why do you think there is a reason why there is a relative lack of radiographers at the very highest echelons of management in the NHS?
So it's much easier So there is always a chief. So there's statutory roles in organisations on the board. We have to have a chief nurse. We have to have a medical director. We have to have a finance officer. So those roles are kind of predefined. So it's probably easier. There is more opportunity for a nurse to get into that role. But my route was through being operational manager. And there are many other professions that want to go into that role too. So an ops manager could be any profession, or even not even a clinical profession. But I do think clinical professions often understand the clinical environment they're working in a much more detailed way. So you're up against far more other professions potentially to be in an ops role and then to be a chief executive. So there aren't a huge, I think there's a radiographer in an ops manager role at Wigan, because I've met her and think she's very good. But I think people are also potentially self-limiting and think we work in an environment that doesn't allow us to develop. Actually, it does allow you to develop, but some of that might be around your own development, that you have to take ownership for your personal development. Because I think the financial situation in the NHS right now, there's not a huge amount of development runners. Actually, what can you do? This is an absolutely brilliant opportunity for people, because what might come of tonight will be something else, and it will continue to evolve and develop. So it's how people embrace and embrace what they can get hold of. That isn't always, you don't always have to pay for or acquire time back. But I think there is more. It's harder in some ways to get to these kind of jobs unless you're absolutely committed to it. And the impact it has on your family and your friends as well is quite profound. So when we went into COVID, I had, you lead by example as a chief executive, and I did not want to be. We were working under the Boris Johnson regime at the time, and on a Friday night, I never knew what he was going to say, and it was a bit like crackerjack. Whatever comes out of his mouth, he had to implement. And that became really hard because you went into the weekend and I can't see my friends, I can't see my family, and I really held those rules close, because if I was expecting our staff to do that, I had to do it myself and with knobs on. So it was about my integrity. So I kind of answered that, but it's much more than just a profession, and it's these jobs. There is no job in the NHS that's easy anymore. No. And I think the further you go up, the further that you'll fall. Yeah. But you have to remember the people that put you up the top as well, and take them with you.
Definitely. No, I think that final point there, Fiona, is a really important one. And I'm getting a flavour of the questions that are coming through, because it does relate back to, I think, some of the challenges that could be put on partly imposter syndrome, but that, about radiographers maybe, just having the opportunity to step out beyond the realms of radiography. Claire Barkle asks that very question, which is, were you accepted as a radiographer in these roles outside of radiography? Would there be often opportunities for you to refer back to yourself as being a radiographer as you moved into your senior roles and into chief exec? Because I think you might know more than I do. I think you are the only chief exec, Fiona, who's current, who's from a radiography background.
I think I might be. I am really proud of the profession. I'm really proud of what it's given me, but I'm also really want to make sure that we give something back. So, do I think we might just tell me what Claire said again?
So Claire said, were you accepted as a radiographer in these roles outside of radiography?
So I'll answer that slightly differently, actually, because I really struggled when I first became a divisional manager, because my finance director at the time kept referring back to radiology and radiographer, and when you did this and I was like, I want to move away from that. Please stop putting me in this radiography box. And then I realised actually he was trying to make some shared understanding. He was trying to talk about it from a point of view that I understood, and he was trying to put me at my ease, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I was like, no, please stop talking about it. I'm doing other things as well. But so it's a symbiotic relationship in some ways, as in you've got to understand what it gives you, but it also support people to understand what it gives you too. So I do provide some mentoring for a lovely woman who's actually an OT. And when I first met her, every conversation she started was, I'm an OT, I am. And it's like, okay, yeah, but all right, let's move you away from this. Because she was diminishing herself in some ways by going, I can only talk about being an OT, when she got lots of other skills that she was acquiring. So there's a bit around, yes, be a radiographer. Yes, make sure that you can't kid a kidder, but also make sure that people understand that influence goes so much broader and you're not just a radiographer or you're not just an OT. Actually, those lifelong skills that you've acquired make you the person you are today, which is part of the profession, but actually also you've acquired skills that are beyond that as well. But you can only do it because you were in or are in that profession. Yeah. Don't ever be just something, because you are an absolute key cog in the greater wheel of the NHS.
I think that's a fantastic sentiment and a way of thinking about not just being a radiographer. The fact that it's also not a belittling thing. I am a radiographer, and that's a great foundation, but I've also got these other skills, and I'm spreading that influence and experience into a different area, and you should respect those things as well. Going on to that kind of seeking opportunities outside of radiology, because I know, like you said, when you were a divisional manager, were you radiology divisional manager? Yeah.
Yeah,
so I know.
I had radiology. In fact, I had radiology, pharmacy, pathology, and then every time somebody didn't want something, it came my way. So, for example, it was, will you take outpatients, or will you take cancer, or will you take? And it was like I kept acquiring things in my division that nobody else seemed to. Some of the tricky things that people didn't really want to do.
So going on from that, we've got a question from John Kitching.
John, hello, John.
Yeah,
how are you?
Hi, John. He was my manager, so he knows me as other things other than Baruch and Boz. How can we better support radiographers seeking opportunities in senior management roles that are outside of radiology, taking that step outside of comfort zone, so to speak?
Well, it goes back to the other thing about let people put you in a box. You've got so many different skills that So this is where I really struggle, because radiology is not just that department, is it? You might be based there, but you'll be in theatre, you'll be in outpatients, you'll be, in the community, you'll be in breast screening. You'll be all over with different people. Actually, it's how you explain what you do, because sometimes people don't know what you do. So you've got to be on the front foot really about, this is what I can do and this is what I have the ability to do, because you've got that special skill of people being able to trust you. I'm not being mischievous about it, but you could be if you wanted to be. But it's a special skill. So people often don't know what radiology actually does. They've been through an X-ray department. They think you take X-rays, but they don't know what you do after that, and they don't know the communication skills you've got with different professionals. And I think I also describe radiology, and it's a bit like maternity in some ways. You've got obstetricians and midwives, we've got radiographers, and we've got radiologists, and very different professional bodies. Actually, we have to rub along together. We have to get on. We're absolutely reliant. One profession is absolutely reliant on the other. So the skills you've got around that clinical community, share them. Radiographers got special skills.
I do think
everybody knows what they are.
I do think that is an often overlooked part of our job, as we have exposure to so many different areas of the hospital.
Absolutely.
from 1 minute to the next, you're talking to an A&E consultant, then you're up in theatre talking to scrub teams and surgeons and anaesthetists. And that ability to be able to swap communication hats is often overlooked.
And just, there is, I am a little bit worried about interventional work. There is not enough interventionalists either, and I don't see why radiographers can't be interventionalists as well. So I am worried about interventional radiology, in my own organisation and beyond. But it's a skill that can be acquired, taught and used. We just need the colleges to support that development. Who'd have thought years ago that radiographers would be doing breast biopsies? Who'd have thought they'd be doing FNAs and so on? But why can't radiographers do other biopsies or other interventional work? But it's radiologists are often working from home because there's so much work for them to do. Actually, how do we do that? How do we apply those skills and make sure that the service we provide for our patients is fit for practice in the future too?
Definitely. You've got some thumbs up coming up there, Fiona, on the screen. Lots of people agreeing with you, and I think the point on who would have thought radiographers would be doing some of the stuff. It's a very UK centric thing. We should be very, very proud, and this is largely down to the opportunities that have been provided through the NHS through various challenges on supply and of certain skill sets, that radiography has gone to some incredible levels clinically. And I think I often refer to these things as a journey, and sometimes if you explain to let's say the radiographers of 20, 30 years ago what's happening now, or clinicians to what radiographers are doing now 20 years ago, they would probably fall off their chairs, and so on. But it's a journey. It is a journey, and sometimes not going from 0 to 100 miles an hour is the right thing to do. It is very much about being able to progress to that point. But therein lies some of the challenges, because now we are pushing boundaries as a profession, and I think, without wanting to get too controversial, I think now with the challenges of within AI, for example, if I think about advanced practice, it's now come to the helm again, and I think perhaps this is where maybe your sensitivity as being a radiographer and as chief exec, you'll have to deal with some of these challenges, right, amongst clinicians that are seeing radiographers in advanced practice wanting to further their role, scope of practice, right?
As I said at the beginning, there's more than enough work to go around. We've got an ageing population, we've got a very deprived population, so we need to be, our workforce strategy has to be fit for the future. We've got the NHS 10-year plan. There's so many elements of it around community services, so many elements of it around digital. Actually, how do we embrace it? And I think the worst thing we can do is be fearful of another profession, be fearful of other individuals. Actually, what drives that profession and how do we support them? But I think radiology as a whole, it has to keep, the technology has exceeded anybody's expectations, and it will continue to do so. But we still need people, and sometimes those people might be doing different jobs. I was part of we had radiographers, and then we didn't have anything else. We didn't have advanced, we didn't have assistants. And it took a while for radiographers to grasp that around, actually, those assistants can really do some really great work that I don't have to do to allow me to do this development. And I think radiologists also have to support that development. And the majority of them do, because they know there's too much work. But I genuinely believe that if you stick it, radiographers are as far away from dinosaurs as you can make them. But if you get stuck in your rut, we will be.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. Important advice. Interestingly, I always say with webinars like this, Fiona, if people take one thing away from it, they can use practically the following day. It's been a good exercise. I think there's more than that sort of that many brilliant pieces of advice coming through from tonight. Emma Law's got a question for you, but before I give you the question, I just want to read out to you what she's wrote because it's quite important. She says, Fiona, you are an inspiration, and I hope someday I find the right opportunity to progress. Absolutely, your words were spot on. Thank you. Wish there were more managers listening to your talk. Fundamentals are everything.
Come and work in Bolton. It's brilliant.
I think there'll be a few people applying after tonight. Emma's question is there any qualifications or academic pathway you would recommend to help progress?
I had a great education in the union. I can't tell you how brilliant that was. Somebody did once call me a poacher turned gamekeeper because it's kind of you know stuff. It was free education, but it was a commitment. There are so many different career pathways. I did a bit of research for a while. That was brilliant, but as I say, sometimes that I get I've got a limited attention span. That's just me, and I need to move on to something else. I need to see almost some instant gratification. So it's horses for courses, really. It depends what drives you, where you flourish, but don't do something you're not enjoying. You need to have joy in your life every day. These jobs are really hard, so don't do something just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
People want to do PhD, absolutely brilliant, but that's a huge commitment, and it depends what's right for you. And if it's not, it might not be right for you now, but it might be right for you in the future. So there are any opportunity to take them. The NHS Leadership Academy is also there for your support. Use it. You can get free coaching, free mentoring through the Leadership Academy. It's another opportunity, but anything that's free I used to take. I think it got me out of the department, and some people wanted me out of the department. If it's free, take it. Is my opportunity. It would be my opportunity. There is some development money in organisations, but it's few and far between. It's probably getting less and less every year.
Well, that was a really amazing plug of the fact that we've just made the L&D companion free as well.
I knew you'd get in there, Foddy. I knew you'd get in there.
Segue, wasn't it?
I would not waste an opportunity like that one. But no, that's that for me though is interesting, because I think then sometimes it goes back to re-engaging the workforce, right, Fiona? Because if we can demonstrate that there's some really good free practical opportunities for people, it can just get them re-engaged and reminders of what, why they get up in the morning and do what they do, right?
I have thought of something else actually. So there's a curiosity, and I think sometimes radiographers, in fact, quite a lot of people don't really understand how NHS organisations work. And from my point of view, it would be really brilliant if people were curious about how they worked, because some of that governance structure is put into as a hierarchy. Business cases will go here, there, and everywhere. The first time somebody asked me to write a business case, I remember it very well. He red-penned it and said, "This is rubbish." It's like, okay, well, that was a learning opportunity for me. I didn't know where to go, but actually learn how organisations work. Be curious. Your board is in an NHS organisation, the board is a meeting in public. Go and find out. Go and see how boards work, or follow a business case through as part of your development, so you understand. So when you do get those jobs, you won't. I failed miserably in my first business case. Elaine will know. I think it was red-penned everywhere by our divisional manager at the time. But yeah, use it. It will make your life easier to understand, and it will help you formulate a view of how organisations function and how a radiographer can be central to it as well. But that's a free good. Use it as part of your development.
Yeah, I think that actually feeds into kind of answers a little bit of Holly Holly Spencer's asked literally that question of how did you get to grips with learning those organizational structures, the processes, and the strategic thinking of leadership?
Yeah. So yes, that one is being curious. Two, you kind of find out by your own failings as well, because you'll do something and then it'll take you longer because you don't know how to navigate some of the governance in an organisation. So there is that being curious, but you know, unless you go and find out, people kind of assume that you know how organisations function. And even in the last week, I've been not amused, but been wondered why people don't, in senior clinical roles, don't know how organisations function. But nobody's told them, but equally they're not curious to find out. So you do have to be curious, and you will fail more and learn more because you'll fail, but it's failing fast and learning quick. We don't put on a school of thought around this is how organisations function. We kind of put on in fact, sometimes I don't even know how the NHS functions. You know, people move, we make so many different decisions, and the consequences of our actions are not always fully understood. So, you know, be curious, ask the question, ask your chief executive, how does it work? You know, because sometimes we need to be provoked around, oh, you don't know that, so what do we do about it? How do we communicate differently? But yeah, and so tonight is our Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Our colleagues representing the organisation, but it's our opportunity to educate our counsellors about how the NHS functions, because they think because their neighbours had a specific healthcare problem and it's failed or it's succeeded, that's how it works. But I think the public don't know how the NHS works, and as members of staff, we don't always know how it works either. It is very complex and overly so, and we create, and I say to people, we make the rules, we can change them. But people at the front of the organisation dealing with patients need to tell us what rules to change, because we're too far away from it.
Yeah.
And we make rules and don't understand the consequences and then the impact's profound for patients as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that was a very roundabout way of saying it. But strategically, so again, you know, I love a bit of politicking. I love looking at what's going on. And that is another word for strategic. It's about planning and having a map and having a strategy around where your organisation's going. And get involved. If there's a strategy session, go and find out what's going on and how you can input as a radiographer, because we can't do anything without you.
Yeah, that's for sure. And actually, interestingly, I mean, Lydia asked a question about how do we as radiographers break these barriers down, you know, making a presence, you know, when we think about the roles outside of radiography, Fiona. But actually within that question, it also feeds into Catherine Hannah's question, which is how do we as radiographers get away from the image of being a service department and show that we are an important and integral part of the patient journey, and you know, how do we improve our profile in the public eye? Now, I know some of these sort of things you've touched upon, but you know, the breaking the barriers when other professions have often got those senior roles, the idea of improving our image, I think they all feed into stepping out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah, Catherine, thanks for that. We were students together, so thanks for that. Dead embarrassing now. Anyway, if you've got the answer, tell me, because I really struggle with this day and age, organisational profiles and professional profiles. Everybody has a view, but really nobody knows what's happening. So it's how do we, tell me the secret and I'll tell you and I'll support it. But radiographers are integral to the patient journey. You can't, as I say, you can't do anything without us. And, you know, I think, you know, I think it's important to have a strategy around where your organisation's going. And, you know, I love a bit of politicking. I love looking at what's going on. And, you know, I think I think you'd have the same conversation in any department, in any hospital or any community services. We are in service of patients. We are in service of the public, so we are a service department. But you can't do anything without radiographers. But it's how we promote it, and I really struggle with that promotion because it's a real. It goes from arrogance to humility, and there's you can say how brilliant we are, then somebody will try and take your knees off, and then you'll be really humble, and somebody will say, "Why are you not shouting about it?" So I think the other opportunity is to make sure that in a board meeting we always start with the patient and staff story. I don't think I've ever heard from a radiographer in my own organisation. I've heard from pathology, but I don't think I've ever heard from a radiographer as that integral part of the patient journey.
Wow, I think that's such an important point there. I mean, and actually, to your point, we're not. I think sometimes as human beings, unless we are, we start to utilise some personality traits that we're not happy with. The ego has landed, sort of thing, Fiona. We're not very good at shouting loud and proud about ourselves and our achievements. And that's why I think it's always been important. I mean, we ran an event a couple of months ago called Cheering the Cheerleaders of Radiography, because I think if we don't get out there to shout about some of the achievements our profession has done, then those...
Who else is going to do it?
Who else is going to do it?
100%.
Precisely. So, yeah, no, thank you for that.
I do think, though, the public have got... It's a strange time we're living in, and the public have got perceptions, and I think sometimes it's about stories, and we need to tell better stories about radiology and radiography.
Yeah, I think that the narrative is still you're taking a picture, rather than there is no one that goes through a hospital that doesn't see us, essentially, pretty much. And that's it's framing the profession as a profession rather than just a job, if that makes sense.
Yes.
We've got some. There was one. Sorry,
just before you look at that one, Baruch,
lost it here.
The question from Inyen next. I mean, I promise you we're not doing this, but there's some synchronicity in the way the questions are coming through, versing your question, your answers, Fiona, and Inyen's, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, sir, asked the question: what one thing can your radiography workforce do that can support your goal and role as chief exec in your trust? I think one of the things you just mentioned is speak up and ask us questions, right?
There's many things that you can do, but the one thing that I would love people to do is there are so many inefficiencies that you see every day.
Yeah.
Shout about them, do something about it, and when somebody says you can't do that because it's that, find a way to do it, because from a patient care perspective, I'll use this as an example, but your patient comes into A&E, there's an X-ray, then they have a CT, then they have an MR, they might then go for an ultrasound, they might have something else. Actually, why are radiographers not saying, this is what you need to have, this will get you the end result far quicker, and it will stop you taking that patient on a journey they don't need to be on. But there are loads of inefficiencies. You go on the ward. You are secret weapons in some ways. When you go on the ward, you'll know when a ward is working well, and you'll know when a ward is not working well. Actually, share that, because it's not being a secret shopper. Actually, you are seeing it from a professional point of view. When you go and do a mobile or you go into a ward, you know how they work. You know how you're greeted, and you know how patients are treated. Share that, share it. But the one thing is that there are so many inefficiencies in organisations. If you see it, share it, and let's support the change, and just let's improve.
Yeah. Baruch, before you come in with Hannah's question, which is where we're up to at the moment, Fiona, one of the things I just want to quickly share with you, I have many favourite radiographers, so Baruch, don't get upset when I say someone else is a favourite now, and many other people in this virtual room, but I will name and shame positively a radiographer who now works in industry, Sadaf Ali Drakesmith. And Sadaf said something to me on one of our podcasts a couple of years ago that really stuck with me about your point about seeing the inefficiencies. Now, she said you would have cut her and she would have bled, she would have bled NHS. And she said she still does, even as an industry radiographer. That hasn't changed. What she said to me is she saw things as a radiographer that when she was approached by an organisation once that had a software who thought, and this was a team of techies, Fiona, and they thought what they had to present to Sadaf was the most amazing piece of technology. And Sadaf happened to sit there and say, but I think you're forgetting X, Y, and Z. And it was she was putting on her hat as a radiographer and the practicalities, the functionalities of it. And literally they came away, and by the third or fourth visit to her, they literally turned around and said to her, because she had single-handedly helped them shape that product, they went,
Yeah,
you
they
need
said.
to come and work for us. Is that right?
Yeah, they said they almost completely redid the software, didn't they, because of her
Wow.
feedback?
Yeah, so that's a radiographer there demonstrating the practicalities of how you can change for, service models,
I
tools.
want everybody to do that though, because there are ways we do things and we kind of get stuck in the way we do things. And when you ask somebody why we do it, it's always, that's why we've always done it. No, challenge that. We do it differently. If it doesn't work, then at least we've tried and try something else.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. Hannah Williams is kind of coming from your point of view, advice to other operational and strategic leaders. How can other people in positions such as yourself empower the radiographers or any of the staff to take on their own development? Because especially in today's world where funding is getting tighter and tighter, what is it that the leaders can do to engage the staff?
So, working in there's a bit of me wants to say work in an organisation where you're embraced and that you know that you'll get that development, or you'll be given opportunities that you're not going to be allowed elsewhere. So I think you can be a little bit more choosy about where you work. But I think some of the development opportunities you have to own it yourself. It's your professional development. It's not anybody else's. It's what works for you. And there are we've got so many different things that are free, but there are things that cost money, and it's how you go through that route in your own organisation to say, this is the impact it's going to have on service. It can't just be about your professional development. Actually, it's the benefits of you doing that particular programme of work. What's the impact it's going to have on your department and on your patients and on your colleagues? And if you can justify that, then it's hard to turn down.
Definitely.
But it needs to be about the service.
Yeah.
It would be my view, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the questions, Fiona, will coax out a different answer of something that you may have, already answered in a different way. But I think it's quite useful to see the angles of which, some of the speakers are coming from. So Sandra, as they asked the question, what processes do we need to follow to attain this height? Obviously speaking about the senior leadership roles. As an ambitious radiographer who's interested in managerial roles, what do you think is the best approach to go about my ambition?
Go to your boss and your boss's boss and your boss's boss's boss to find out what they do and tell them, I'm here, I'm really interested in doing something differently. This is what radiographers give me, but be visible and make sure people know who you are. Actually, people do find out where the good people are as well, that you can find them. But usually it's a word of mouth thing, Sandra. So use your starting position needs to be your own. Own it yourself and make sure that people know who you are in a good way. they knew who I was, but not necessarily in a good way in some ways. But yeah, make sure they know who you are.
I think that's a great piece of advice for anyone with any aspirations, whether managerial, clinical, things like that, the specialist areas. The more people who are going to be employing you or interviewing you know that you're passionate about that area of expertise, the more likely they are to, put a hand out when there's a job coming up or when there's an opportunity, a secondment, those type of things.
Yeah,
I think that's
people's names. You'll know that in certain organisations, there'll be certain names that everybody knows, and they'll be like, if there's something happening, or that person will sort it out because they know that they're a doer and they make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a very topical question from Rachel Picton that you did touch upon, but I think she wants, how do you think the shift is going to be in the coming years towards community diagnostics, and how do you think that radiography fits into that?
If I say that our community diagnostic centre is on the hospital site, would that make any difference to you? I know it is. It genuinely is, because we couldn't find anywhere to place it, and actually it's on the main hospital spine, so we can manage it much more effectively. But we do have community services out elsewhere in Bolton too. I think there's two things. It's how do we so if we're going to do CT and MRI in the community, which we do, actually, how do we have that support from people to develop further work? But I'm really curious about how radiographers get involved in neighbourhood care. So there'll be so many patients who, for example, GP referrals, actually GP will refer somebody in for a diagnostic, and it'll go through a very validation process, won't it? Actually, if you were in a neighbourhood hub with that GP, you could triage that patient with that GP and make sure they went to the right diagnostic or had the right diagnostic for their disease. So why are radiographers not working with GPs or in primary care networks or with neighbourhood hubs as part of that integrated team? There's opportunities there. The GPs want diagnostics. They want a dead simple, easy thing to be able to keep a patient out of hospital. So why can't radiographers work in diagnostic centres as advisory to GPs?
Yeah, I think we're going from topical to potentially where we could say around the contentious pushing boundaries now, where we can take the profession. Fiona, I speak about the future of the radiography with caution of where we're heading with AI, for example, and practice of autonomous practice, because this is the time where we can really demonstrate the touch points of radiography, and community diagnostics for me is absolutely one of them. I mean, there is no shameless plug or sponsor I require next webinar from Fujifilm when I say to you about, for example, the community diagnostic car, for example. There are many different types of technologies and that radiographers, if they're not careful, will be run ragged by other professions that want to get their hands on it.
So my advice is, don't be a victim. Actually, don't wait for something to happen, because if you're not on the front foot, other professions will take advantage, because if they see a gap, they'll be in there. So don't wait for something. So the south west coast, I think they had imaging in the back of ambulances, didn't they? I don't think they had a radiographer anywhere near it. So I don't even want to think about what the diagnostic imaging looked like, because people weren't trained to use it. So be part of it and make sure you are part of it. You've got big voices, don't rule yourself out.
Completely. And Fiona, there's whilst we wait, we got time, everyone, for some few more questions. I've got a question, Fiona, that I'd really love to get your view on, which is, given that the way NHS departments and services are funded. So a lot of the challenges I'm seeing, if I think about some of the services that radiography and radiology departments feed into, which is, let's face it, 95% of the the patient pathway, I think, is the statistic. But we still have a challenge around funding because of where the block contracts and the funding sits. I wonder whether there is any innovations that you could see that, for example, A&E could fund out of hours hot reporting, for example, but can't because it's a radiology service, and we get stuck in this little tick for tat of who should fund that service. But the benefactors in that instance would be A&E from a maybe a admission flow perspective, but radiology from an extension of role perspective. So I'm just curious to sort of know what advice you'd give, to any managers sort of out there, any aspiring managers, about how we could try to create, business cases for funding to be released for these types of roles.
So I think that there's budget setting in any organisation is fraught with tension, and you can, in diagnostics, you can set off with a zero-based budget, and everybody pays for what they have. So you have to set up a trading account. That has been done, and the impact might be you're not requesting a diagnostic when you actually need it because you want to save money elsewhere. But you are generally, in an organisation, the team will commission services through the divisions. You'll be given your budget setting agreement at the beginning of the year, but it's up to you before you get to that point. So this time of year, you should be considering, what do you want to do next year? What service growth do you see? What's your demand on? Be really clear about your demand on services. Make a really compelling argument about, if we're doing. So I'll use this as an example. So Elaine will know this. When I was a radiology manager at Salford, I did a massive capacity and demand thing, so that to fund staffing, because we had lots of people doing lots of additional hours, so they were paid lots more for doing the additional work, but they were tired. Actually, you could take that funding and create a 7-day service in MR, for example, at the time. But you want to make sure that you understand your demand, understand your capacity, you've got a compelling argument, and if you want to grow the service, then my other advice is, don't grow the service without having a justified business case, because if you do that, you'll be doing it for free. So any growth in service, or a closed book of services, and if you want to do anything else, there's a business case that supports it, and other bits of the organisation need to pay for it. If they want it, you can provide it, but it'll cost you this. So, and this is where interventional come in as well. You look at, there are certain things that you would do in theatre. Actually, you could do it in a radiology department. So you take the funding out of theatre and you put it into radiology, but you have to have a compelling argument why it's better, why it's safer, why it's a better quality product for the patient, and actually you'll let them get home the same day. There are many things that you can do, but it's having those ideas, but also making sure this is what we do, and if you want us to do more, we have to be paid for it. Yeah. Because organisations have a lot of money. It's how we spend it. And if we can save it by creating efficiencies and doing things differently, and you can see how you can do it differently by moving, going to theatre costs a lot of money for patients. Going to an interventional radiology department costs a lot less.
Wow.
It's that type of thing. That type of thinking is sometimes missed opportunity from the interventional radiographers, the people working in these rooms that can see these opportunities and ways to make things more efficient and better for the patients, but then don't think to past talking about it in the staff room. And it's that type of thing. It's people need the confidence to just to step outside and say, right, I'm going to do a business case, and can you help me?
Yeah. How do I do this? Because actually, it's going to this is better for patient care. The driver always has to be improvement in patient care or patient pathway. And if you can justify that, then why would you not? But you do, people do have lots of good ideas. They just never get, like you say, out of the staff room. And you need to. You absolutely need to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Do you know, with that in mind, Fiona, I do wonder where we're touching upon some of the big challenges I think now we're sort of facing now is that there's some people think that opportunity gets lost somewhere along the line. As Barak said, it doesn't go beyond the staff room. But I do think to myself, we still have a window of opportunity as a profession to dictate and influence the future direction of radiography. But we're fast, that time is running, quicker and quicker because, the next the next articles out there about failing, services and this error and that backlog, and AI is creeping up in the background like this, going, "Hey, this is feeding into our world." The techies and stuff like that. So I do think that there we have a window of opportunity, right? And does that come back into what you said before from a radiographer's perspective, that they need to seek out the forums in their hospitals. They need to seek out and speak up around the things they see.
Absolutely. You use that voice and use it wisely and shout about it. I think the other thing that you were making me think there, Cody, was around how universities can support development too. Because the universities will have a set programme. They'll be looking at the student. They'll be looking now at next year's intake, and actually, are the university programmes and education fit for what we want radiographers to do in the future? So I think there is opportunities where we have to work with universities, and also the universities will want to make sure that they're developing people too. There are many different ways of doing that, but I do think we can't self-limit. But yeah, we need, and it's across the whole board. So education and service and research and development. Make sure you're in those conversations, because if you're not in those conversations, how do we know what we need to do in the future?
Yeah.
But yeah, universities, I think they get a bit worried about funding, but we absolutely need to make sure that people are fit for practice when they come out.
Yeah, I think universities. Sorry, Barak, you carry on.
No, I think that's a very important point that, again, is not thought about as much. We're training students, and we're in the role, but universities, a lot of the university people putting the curriculums together have been out of practice for a while, or are just slightly out of touch. They have slightly different goals, whereas we need to be feeding back into these institutions saying, this is the direction the profession is going. Please, can you build your curriculum in that direction? Because otherwise we're going to get, short-changed basically, and we're doing ourselves a disservice.
And I had the beauty of a really diverse placement as a student. But I think we don't always have that. Different universities offer different placement opportunities, and if your placement is just in one organisation, you may only get very limited experience. When you're in another organisation, you'll get a whole raft of different experiences. So we're not providing a consistent approach to training our new students either.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
But the people who know that are our clinical tutors, and the clinical tutors know that because they've got placements, and you're working with people, so you know what the students of tomorrow are going to look like because you're training them.
I think there is an opportunity for the organisations and overseeing organisations of professions, not just radiography, to make sure that there is an equality across the education, no matter where you go, which university you're going to be a British HCPC NHS trained radiographer, you should all be getting the same, because we're getting vast differences in training, as you said.
Yeah. I mean that. Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, I was going to say, we absolutely are, because the people coming out need quite a lot of support to actually not just speak to patients, because they don't, because they've always had somebody else in the room. So it's how do we have to pay it forward. One of us will need some imaging in the future, and you want to make sure that somebody knows how to deal with you, and they're highly qualified to do so. And I think sometimes there is a variation across the country around what kind of training our students get.
Yeah. Lydia mentions, Lydia Johnson, Fiona mentions, future-proofing our future leaders is key, and so ensuring there is training at the fundamental stages is key at the start of their career. And she agrees totally with the conversations. I would like to add to that, Lydia, to say to you, Fiona, that I'm pleased to hear more discussions about the term preceptorship, and actually preceptorship isn't just from student to early careers. It's at every different point in your career. A solid preceptorship that is profession specific, as opposed to borrowing from nursing, is very, very key to ensuring we're not setting people up to fail as they move through different parts. But Barak and I have spoken about something in the past around generation, the fact that the generation that's coming into the workplace now is 3 or 4 generations from those, the leaders and the superintendents, let's say that's line managing them, and it's really key, right, that we understand the strengths that this new generation bring. I mean, for example, and I'm using my 18-year-old daughter as a prime example of this, is that they know when to say no. They know when their time is their time. I often think that some of the goodwill that got eroded during my career, when I used to just stay that little bit longer in my role to do what I wanted to do, has burnt me out in certain parts. So I think we can learn a lot from this generation, and I think also, just to mention, Barak, to plug that event you did once with the BIR, which was from uni to uniform, right? I mean, that I think almost needs to be a version 1, version 2, version 3, because that's going to change as new generations come into the workplace, right?
Absolutely. And discretionary, the NHS only can deliver its services with that discretionary effort. And that discretionary effort is getting thinner and thinner, because people don't feel valued, or you want me to do that, you pay me to do it. There is a very different, and some of it is you will do it because you want your own development, but you probably want, if it's in your own time, you want to be paid for it.
Yeah.
And people like me grew up doing a load of discretionary effort, and I don't think our generations to come will they value their social time as much as their professional time.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's gone from one extreme to the other. It's not a bad thing. People should be paid for what they do. And I think the NHS would abuse some of that good nature.
Doesn't it come back to the point you made before about kindness in the workplace? I mean, we've done a webinar on this last month, and it's people will respond better to if they're treated better. I think it's a simple equation, isn't it? It doesn't take rocket science mathematics to do that. But I think that's perhaps the zero tolerance that's going on, and the challenges in the workplace. I think it's becoming harder and harder because we're spending in some ways less time with the patient, and and that stresses goes on into the workplace. But we can't stress enough, how much kindness in the workplace is going to be key in this next phase.
Yeah, there's you can't discriminate either. So it's not about kindness to patients; it's kindness to each other, and being a little bit more tolerant of people, but also being really clear about what the standards are you expect. And I think kindness is also being very clear about you won't tolerate certain things.
I think that's the thing we're getting. We're getting kind of a. It was when I entered the profession, it was very much a do this, do that, this is what we do. Suck it up and get on with it. And we're now moving towards self-care. We're better at looking after ourselves. But I think we're almost going too far in one direction or the other, and we need somewhere in the middle where people can recognize that I'm not going against you, but we still have standards that need to be met in a service, in the way you work, and I think that needs to be remembered for, as you said, as a kindness, because if we go too far one way and you let your standards slip, you're letting yourself go towards, for instance, disciplinary scenarios, things like that, because you're a good thing, looking after yourself and things like that, but you can't let the standards slip with that.
You're not being good by patients either, because if your standards slip, you're not caring for those individuals who are really vulnerable in your care. So people think it's being, you have to be brave and courageous, and you have to have really high standards, and that's what radiography also taught me to.
Definitely.
You want the best image in the shortest amount of time to be able to diagnose that individual as quickly as possible, so that some form of care or treatment can be started.
What you both articulated better than I did there is that actually, and I learnt this, there's a fly attacking me now. I learnt this far later in my career than I really wish I had, Fiona, which is that there is a distinct difference between kind and nice. And I think that's the important sort of it's an important skill to understand the difference between.
We all like to be liked, but a radiographer a long time ago called Mary said to me, "You don't get paid to be liked, you get paid to do a job." And I've never forgotten it.
People never forget how you make them feel, Fiona, whatever that did to you. I think that's a very important point to come upon. We've got some mentions here about if this has been recorded. It has been recorded. We are so grateful to everyone who's asked the questions. And Fiona, I told you the 90 minutes will go quickly, right?
Well, I just hope it made sense to people, because if I ramble, I'm sorry. I've got a very...
If anyone's...
I think I'm dead funny.
If anyone's listened to any of our podcasts, Foddy and I have rambled more than anyone else that have come on.
It was amazing, Fiona. We can't thank you enough. I would like to give you the sort of any final sort of points that you'd like to sort of give to everyone. You've given some amazing advice tonight, and I can't thank you enough. But the floor is yours for any final points.
So all I'll say is, as radiographers, don't rule yourself out. Your future career may be waiting on the other side of a conversation. Use your voice really loudly, or apply for a job. Even if you don't think you're ready for it, just throw your application in. If you're not brave and make those courageous opportunities count, and you let yourself down, please don't let yourself down. This profession gives you so much. Make sure you take every opportunity that comes your way. Some of them will be really testing you, and some of them will be really helping you, but use it and keep giving our patients the care they need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Fiona. Honestly, it's been an honour and a pleasure to have you on the L&D Companion tonight, and maybe we can do this again one day in the near future, and we'll go to version 2 of it. But
if I've not been sacked, buddy, and lots of people can sack me, and
I think it's all the more reason.
It's all a learning opportunity. It's all a learning opportunity.
Exactly. We can talk about that.
It's quite liberating once you know that everybody can sack you. It can be quite liberating because you can't manage through fear.
Thank you ever so much.
Back on again. Fiona, if I can keep you on just for a couple of minutes before Buzz, thank you everyone for joining. It's been amazing tonight. I've really enjoyed it. It's gone very, very quickly, 90 minutes, and generally means it's been an exceptional evening. Thank you everyone. Thank you Fiona. Thank you Barak, as always. See you later.
Thank you.